Everybody, welcome back to the shop, and today I have a really fun project that I want to get started, and it's going to be a blacksmith vise. I'm not going to build just any blacksmith vise. We're going to build a giant floor standing vise that looks just like this. So this is what I came up with, and as you can see, this vise is gigantic. The original ones normally weighed in about 500 pounds. And I've heard I get extra points if I get anything above that, or at least I'm going to try. So this vise stands to almost 3 feet tall, and it's about 3 feet wide, and it's a big giant one-piece construction. Of course, the original ones were cast, but we're going to make it steel. This is the working end. This is kind of like a anvil slash vise. You can pound, beat, and clamp on things. And then in the center here, we'll have to put some sort of moving arm that pinches your work in between those 2 points. And on this end, we're gonna have some sort of screw that pushes that arm over. One of the things I like about cutting something out of plywood is I can see it and visualize it. And I can already see a problem with my first design, as I really don't like this meat down here between the hole and this valley. I'm gonna increase that a little bit. And then problem number 2 is that it doesn't fit on my piece of plate steel. So what I'm gonna have to do to fit this big weird shape is cut it on this W line here. So we're gonna go do that and then come back and try to lay it out on this piece of plate to maximize our usage and not waste anything. I have to cut out 2 sides to make up the body of the vise. There it is, maybe. I can't think of a better use for this piece of plate than turning it into a giant vise, so let's hack it up in the water jet. I'm gonna come back to the water jet once it's done cutting, but until then, I'm gonna do some machining over here at the lathe, so let me show you what I'm gonna work on next. I have this big 6-inch round bar that I'm gonna saddle right here in the framework when this is done, and that's this piece. And what I need to do to it first is square off both ends on the lathe, and then we'll take it to the shaper and make a notch in the side of it to accept a jaw. So while we're waiting, let's get this all cut up. Whew, that was pretty cool. The shaper does a really good job clearing off a lot of material rather quickly. And look at the pile of chips. That's just awesome. They're all over the floor. Hear that? I've got a mess to clean up. Now that we got a pocket cleared out in this block, I want to pull it out and we'll take it to the Acer mill and we'll tap some holes and do a light finish pass on it and be able to get ready to mount a jaw into this part. So let's go do that now. I'm really happy the way this part's shaping up. The shaper did a fantastic job, and I have some holes tapped in here to be able to accept a jaw a little bit later on. But until then, I need to mount this thing into a frame, which I believe the water jet should be just finishing up, so let's go check up on it. Fresh off the water jet, this is an 1 5/8" plate, and this is making up the body of the whole vise, and we're gonna have 2 of these if we have to weld together. And I cheated a little bit and used the water jet 5-axis cutting, and I made it have a bevel on both sides of my plate so that when I go to weld it, I have a full penetration weld. Nobody will even know that this part was even cut apart. So we'll weld that together there. But what I also did notice is when the water jet was cutting this part out, there's a lot of stress that gets built up in these rolled pieces of plate, and it literally has a potato chip to it, and you could notice this as it popped out of its framework when the water jet was cutting. So we're gonna have to deal with that as we weld these parts together. I've been looking forward to burning some wire, so let's get these 2 pieces welded together. What do you guys think? This is our first look of one side of this big giant blacksmith vise coming together. Overall, I'm really happy the way it looks. It's starting to look like something cool. And this is much better looking than that piece of plate that was just sitting underneath that scrap pile over there. So we're turning something that was not useful into something useful, but our zigzag or our lightning bolt welded connection did a fantastic job of helping keep this plate straight and also be able to clamp something down to a fixture table. That was always nice and helpful too. And these are actually cut at an angle on the water jet at like 10 degrees because these 2 plates are going to sit kind of like this. If you're looking from the top down, they're going to be wide at this jaw and narrow back here, just to kind of give it some cool angle and some body to it. It's starting to look pretty cool. This design is a deep throat design. So you can see whatever we put in here, we're gonna have this much throat to be able to put a large object in here, like a big piece of sheet metal or something weird. I think this is the strength to this style. And 2, it's gonna be herky and we're gonna be able to really pound, beat, or weld and not worry about damaging the vise overall. So this is going to be extremely useful here in this environment. But the next step we got to do to get this vise together is cut a floor out, a piece of plate steel for these 2 pieces of plate to sit on, and then assemble them in their correct orientation, and then tack weld the jaw into place, and that will hold everything together, and then we'll move on to the next step. So let's get going with that. Well guys, take a look how this beast is coming along. I have this whole thing tacked together just because we don't know what might happen a little bit later down the road. But 4 tacks are holding everything into place, and we have everything square, plumb, and level. Now the next thing I want to tackle before I weld this thing out is getting a moving jaw in here and situated. And it's going to look something like this piece of cardboard cutout. And it's going to mount in here, and this is going to be the pivot pin that's going to rock this thing back and forth. Now in order to get this arm, when we cut this out on the water jet, mounted into this frame, I want to make some bushings that get welded into these holes. And something special that I did when I had the water jet cut this out was cut the holes not perpendicular to the surface. They're actually cut at 5 degrees. And this is going to help me not have to grind because these plates are at an angle. Now I'm going to be welding in a bushing that looks like this. We're going to slice it up, and then I'll be able to weld this bushing in perfectly centered with the pivot pin and the opposite side. That's just going to allow me some flexibility when I fabricated these parts. They don't have to be so perfect. So we're going to slice this up, cut some parts on the water jet, and have a moving jaw. So let's go do it. Well, just call me Captain Obvious because we have our bushing here tacked to the arms, but I now need to tackle the shaft, which is going to be this piece of 3-inch cold roll. It slips in really nice, and what I want to do is I want to machine a groove on the end of the shaft so that the set screw has something to grab onto and it doesn't gall, and these bushings are going to get welded into the frame of the vise. So set screw groove need to match up, and then I'm going to drill straight through the center to where at least I'm halfway into the shaft, and then I'm going to thread, drill, and tap for a grease circ. But I want to drill a cross hole in here. That way we can get grease all up inside this bushing so that it moves real free. So let's go to the bandsaw, cut the shaft down, and then go to lathe and do some machine work there. Probably wondering why I didn't put the grease circ right in the center on that bushing, right between the two jaws. Yes, it would have been easier to put there, but I'm afraid that it's going to get damaged from parts falling on it. It's going to collect a lot of dirt, grit, and grime, and it's going to be a little bit harder to grease in that location. So moving it to the outside, it's going to solve all those problems. Take a look at how cool this jaw fits in here between these two rails. It moves really smooth on this hinge pin along with the grease that we're gonna install, but I'll show you how nice it moves. Take a look at that. That's pretty cool. This thing is heavy duty. Won't be breaking this anytime soon. So the bushings are just sitting there resting. We'll come back and we'll tack them and weld them into place. But just when you think that this thing cannot get any crazier, let me show you what we're gonna add next. 30-ton hydraulic jack. That's right, we're gonna put a 30-ton hydraulic jack right in between these two frame rails to add that little bit extra power if ever need be. So this jack is an air over hydraulic bottle jack, very inexpensive, but I want it to push on the arm. So we're gonna add a foot that needs to attach to this other arm around that center pin right there. So we need to make a couple of these, and then the jack will have to make some sort of table for this pivot to work properly. So let's go to the water jet and cut all the parts to make this happen. Got all the parts all cut out. I'm gonna show you my plan of attack for this. These two arms are gonna get welded to our existing pusher arm. We're going to lose a little bit of mechanical advantage with our little short lever here, but we're still gonna probably pick up 20 tons of force, but I'm not too worried about that. These two arms are gonna be separated apart. It's gonna sandwich this little triangle bracket in between with a pin, and then this plate matches up to the bottom of this hydraulic jack. And I used the technique where I snapped a picture of the bottom with my phone and then traced out and copied the line of the photo to perfectly match this weird base plate that you could almost have a hard time measuring. And I'll drill and tap some holes and we'll be able to mount this wee little 3/4 inch plate to this jack. And we'll weld the plate to this top of this triangle, giving us a tilt effect. And then we'll worry about what we're gonna do at the top a little bit later. So let's get these all sanded, ground down, all cleaned up, polished, deburred, and then welded onto the arms. A lot of you guys have asked me about this cool little capping gun that you guys have seen me use during the build. And it has a clutch inside. So as I push, it turns right. As I pull back, it turns left. And the end swivels so that you won't break the tap off. Okay, here we go. This is 3/4 plate, 3/8 tapped hole. Okay, and all I gotta do is just pull back. Voila, that easy. I'm gonna give you a little update on this hydraulic jack base plate mount. I have it all tacked together. Everything fit up really nice. It's definitely heavy duty and it's gonna take the power that this jack will generate, but it's not quite complete yet. I still have to build some spacers in here to center the jack on these two arms. And as you can tell, it's quite floppy and it's not gonna do any work in this configuration. So I need to design and build a top pocket for this ram here. And I need to give it a little bit of thought on how I'm gonna do that. So we will continue this thought process in the next video, and I'll see you guys there.